What's going on, ladies, gents, and kids of all ages? It is Eric coming back at you once again from the Nerd Cave. Today we are talking about another deck list breakdown, but we're talking about it in a little bit of a different fashion because we're going to be talking about how this deck list pertains to set champs for me and for you. And by that I do mean how it's potentially going to go up against the meta for about $100 budget total, so a pretty fairly reasonable budget deck. I know some people say, you know, it's not a budget deck list unless it's under $50, and I love to talk about those deck lists, but the fact of the matter is some of the better cards in the game have a decent value. Unlike Pokemon, which is largely driven by the collector and the collector value, Lorcana is largely driven by a card's playability. So if a card is good and playable, it is probably going to tie into it having a value that is more significant, at least to add up to $100 deck list total. But this deck list is fantastic. It is going to, I think, play well into the three main color matchups you're probably most likely to be going up against at set champs, which is going to be Ruby, Sapphire, Amber, Steel, and Amethyst, Emerald. It's entirely possible you'll see some other color combinations as well. I think it's a pretty diverse meta right now, but those are really going to be the big three, and there's different versions of each one. We have a discard Amethyst, Emerald, and then we do have a more kind of aggro Amethyst Emerald that's doing some different stuff. And then we have in the Ruby Sapphire camp, we have our DKP version, and then we do have the items version of that build. Personally, I think the DKP version is the way to go. I've always been a proponent of the DKP version, not since it won Worlds. It's a deck that I keep built in my backpack. My deck list is slightly different. You may have seen it. I've talked about it on the channel before. And then you're going to have Amber Steel. Again, two different versions. We're going to have Steel Song, and then we're going to have an Amber Steel Rhino aggro kind of strategy. I think that's going to be the more prevalent of the two. A lot of people like to play the new spicy list as opposed to the old familiar stuff like Steel Song, and we're going to go over, when we're talking about this deck list, how these cards are going to counter those cards you're probably going to be seeing especially in the early turns of the game, and put you in the best position going into the later turns of the game. Obviously it always benefits you to win a dice roll, but before we jump into the deck list, as always, I have to give a big shout out to the Patreons for making giveaways on the channel possible. We are so close to a Reign of the Jafar booster box giveaway coming at you at the end of the month, so if you haven't been commenting on the videos, now is a great time to do so. Get yourself entered in to win that giveaway. I think we only have about 300 or 400 entries right now total, so you've got a great opportunity to win. So if you're the type of person who's like, I always lose these things, all you got to do is comment, slap a comment down below. Let's talk about this deck list. Let's talk about if you're playing these colors, what you're playing that's different. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into talking about my Amethyst Steel counter meta set champs list. So the first card in the 1-cost slot is going to be a 1-cost inkable 1/4 stat line questing for 1 in Palace Guard Spectral Sentry. He also has Vanish, so if he gets targeted, he is going to get banished, and there are some people trying to play against that in the meta, but it's not so super prevalent. And the fact of the matter is, even if somebody's singing it, if they're using a Storm Rage on, or even a Strength of a Raging Fire on a Palace Guard to get rid of it, I'm perfectly happy with that. Even if they use a Fire the Cannons, it's an even ink trade. Next up in the 1-cost slot, we are on 4 Chernobog's Followers, a 1-cost inkable 2/1 stat line questing for 1. And when this character quests, you may banish them to draw a card. So he's going to let you get some fantastic card draw. He is also going to potentially be able to combo with some other things to take out a Rhino. And he's going to trade with a lot of those early game characters that you may potentially be coming up against. If you're playing against somebody whose turn 1 is Cinderella, or Rhino, or Diablo, or Popsicle, Chernobog's Followers is going to feel pretty good. Again, if they use Cinderella to sing something to remove it, kind of a bummer, but not the end of the world. But it is going to trade with them if they're not removing it, so they're not going to want to be exerting those characters. Next up, the final 1-cost character in the deck is going to be 4 Diablo Obedient Raven. Probably more so where you want to be if they're playing that Cinderella, because they're probably not going to sing removal to get rid of your Obedient Raven. They may challenge into it, you never know. He is a 1-cost inkable 0/1 stat line questing for 1, and when he gets banished, you're going to draw a card. Being able to draw a card when your character is getting banished is also a fantastic counterpoint going into the more discard heavy version of Emerald Amethyst. So Diablo is definitely a card you never want to ink in that matchup. It's a card you never want to ink in most matchups. The final card in the 1-cost slot, and perhaps the most significant counter meta card, we have Fire the Cannons, a 1-cost uninkable action that's going to just straight up deal 2 damage to chosen character. Some people aren't big on Fire the Cannons. I think Fire the Cannons, especially in this meta right now, is fantastic. A lot of the stuff you're going to be going into those early game turns, again, is going to be those Cinderellas goes to Fire the Cannons, Rhinos dies to Fire the Cannons. Daisy is unfortunate, but we have other things to deal with Daisy, so we're not super worried about her. We have opposing Chernobog's Followers, Diablos, those shift target Diablos, and those 2/2 Diablos especially, so let them shift first and then fire the cannons the shifted Diablo. So fire the cannons, really super good. It's going to deal with a lot of those early game threats. In the Ruby Sapphire matchup, it's maybe not as significant, but I have had instances where they've attacked in with something like Maui Half Shark, left it with some damage on it, and then I'm able to fire the cannons to clear it off the board. Moving over to the 2-cost slot, I've said it once, I'll say it 100 times. We have one of the best cards in the game in Mr. Smee Bumbling May, a 2-cost inkable 3/3 stat line questing for 2, with at the end of your turn, if this character is exerted and you don't have a captain character in play, deal 1 damage to this character. So he is going to be potentially putting some damage on himself, which isn't the best, but a 3/3 for 2 that quests for 2 is a super solid stat line in the early game. A card that has a less exciting stat line, but is really going to put you in a great position into those discard matchups, as well as even into those Steel Song matchups, because again, much like Diablo, they're not going to want to remove this with removal, so it's more likely to be able to get you a quest. We have Kuzco Wanted Llama, a 2-cost inkable 1/2 stat line questing for 1, with when this character is banished, you may draw a card, same as Diablo. Some people would say playing Kuzco now is overkill. Diablo replaced him. Kuzco is not good anymore. I think Kuzco into a potential discard meta is still very good if you're anticipating a lot of that green-purple discard type of stuff going on, or even Emerald Steel discard. Kuzco can be incredibly good, and much like most of the cards in this deck, he is going to be a combo piece with a card we're going to talk about a little further down. We're only on 2 of these in this deck list. We have a lot of stuff to draw cards, so we don't need these. These are kind of the uh-oh button when we're running out of stuff in our hand. We have Doc Bold Knight, a 2-cost uninkable 1/3 stat line questing for 1, with when you play this character, you may discard your hand to draw 2 cards. Obviously, if you have an empty hand, you discard nothing and draw 2 cards and develop a 1/3 for 2. One of our early game ways to control the board outside of those fire the cannons, we have 3 Calhoun Marine Sergeant, a 2-cost uninkable 3/2 stat line questing for 1, with resist +1, which just makes her that much harder for those opposing steel decks to get rid of. She is going to have during your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, gain 2 lore, which combos not only very nicely with fire the cannons, where you can set something up that your opponent maybe thinks you're not going to be able to remove, especially something cool like a Rapunzel, where you go ahead and fire the cannons, drop it down to only having 3 strength remaining, take it out with a Calhoun. Calhoun takes no damage because it has resist. That type of play line is always super funny. Plus we have another card in the 3-cost slot that makes Calhoun very good. Speaking of the 3-cost slot, this is not the card that I was talking about for Calhoun, but it is a very good card in the 3-cost slot. We have Lawrence, Jealous Manservant, a 3-cost inkable 0/4 stat line questing for 2, with while this character has no damage, he gets +4 strength, so he comes down as a 4/4 who quests for 2. If your opponent puts damage on him, obviously he's a 0/4 at that point, but if they can't, Lawrence can be really good. In the steel matchup, you're probably going to ink him, which is why we're only on 2 of them, because I expect the steel matchup to be prevalent. But if you're playing into like the Ruby Sapphire matchup, even into that Amethyst Emerald matchup, Lawrence is very good. This is a card that may be getting inked if you're thinking your opponent is likely to have removal in hand still in that steel matchup, but Giant Cobra Ghostly Serpent is probably one of the best cards you could get into that Ruby Sapphire matchup, especially when it comes to closing out the games and just kind of being a board threat. Pretty difficult for them to go ahead and remove with its 4/4 stat line. They don't typically have anything that can target it super easily. It is a 3-cost inkable 4/4 who quests for 1 with Vanish, so it is going to get vanished if it gets targeted, which is, you know, again, why in that matchup maybe not so much. But into Amethyst Emerald, not into discard, because of its ability. When you play this character, you may choose and discard a card to gain 2 lore. You can play it without triggering that and not gaining the lore, but I think in that discard matchup, this card is more likely to be ink. If you're going against the other version of Emerald Amethyst that's not discard though, Giant Cobra is very, very good in that matchup. A card I haven't really seen in the Amethyst Steel deck list, but I think is actually really funny and can be really good in the right situation. We have 3 Vinny Green Pigeon, a 3-cost uninkable 1/4 stat line questing for 1, with during an opponent's turn, whenever one of your other characters is banished, you are going to gain 1 lore. So keep in mind, much like those Lyle Tiberius Rorks and some of those other cards that are going to apply to all other characters, Vinny is going to trigger on this ability, even on something like a Be Prepared. So if you have 3 other characters in play and then you throw down a Vinny and your opponent Be Prepared, you are going to gain 3 lore off those other characters hitting the bin. So can make Vinny super worthwhile. 3 ink for 3 lore is really good. If you're gaining more lore than that, obviously it makes them even that much better. But Vinny is super funny. In the steel matchup, he's really good with a 1/4 stat line. He's going to be difficult for your opponent to remove with direct removal. Obviously, Zeus steals with him. In the Ruby Sapphire matchup, they are very much looking to board wipe. So again, Vinny is a very good way to prevent those board wipes. Both versions of Ruby Sapphire are looking to board wipe you. And then when it comes down to that Emerald Amethyst matchup, Vinny could be a little interesting in that matchup. He's not always exactly where you want to be, but the only thing your opponent can typically do about him if you're not exerting him is like kick Cloud Kicker him back to your hand, which isn't the worst thing in the world. So you can potentially keep him down where your opponent can't remove him, and maybe they'll throw down like an Elsa, exert him, and take him out that way, and they're committing a lot of resources to removing Vinny. Speaking of cards that are great in the 3-cost slot, probably great into every matchup because it is a action heavy meta, we have 3 Pete Games Referee, a 3-cost uninkable 3/3 stat line questing for 1 with when you play this character, opponents can't play actions until the start of your next turn. So it's going to shut off those Be Prepared, it's going to shut off those direct removal cards from Steel, it's going to shut off some of those bounce or draw cards from those Amethyst Emerald decks, as well as those discard cards from the discard version, at least the discard actions. So Pete is still super good in the current meta. You know or you love her, we have 4 Madam M Fox, a 3-cost inkable 4/3 stat line questing for 1 with when you play this character, banish her or return another chosen character of yours to your hand. And then of course she has Rust, so she's going to come down and clear out some opposing threats. She is our big answer to those early game Daisy Ducks in that Amber matchup. She doesn't quite deal with a Rhino by herself, but she can definitely put some pressure on. She will typically clear out those Gym Deers if your opponent's playing something like that. She can clear a big Sisu in those Sapphire Ruby matchups, and she is also going to just be really good into Amethyst Emerald and all the characters that they're playing. And next up, still in the 3-cost slot, we're on 4 Merlin Crab, a 3-cost inkable 3/3 stat line questing for 1 with when you play this character and when he leaves play, a chosen character gains Challenger +3. So obviously fantastic with something like Mim Fox, where you're going to be able to make her a 7/3 while you're bouncing him back to your hand. So typically you want to be on Crab on 3, boost up one of your little squishy guys, super good with Kuzco to give Kuzco a 4 attack, and then on the following turn bounce him back to your hand, clear something with Mim up to a pretty significant threat, and then you still have that Crab ready to go on the following turn. I think Crab is a great 4 of right now. Next up, we have 4 Friends on the Other Side, a 3-cost inkable action Song. So in that Emerald Amethyst matchup, you definitely want to be inking this early if it's in your hand so it doesn't get Ursula'd away from you. But this card is going to draw you 2 cards by singing it with one of those 3-cost characters. Super good with Crab, super good with Fox. You have a lot of 3-cost cards that are questing for 1, so losing that to be able to draw 2 is a pretty worthwhile trade-off, and it's just going to keep your hand fueled, keep you potentially running stuff onto the board and gaining some additional lore. Last card in the 3-cost slot, we have 3 The Library, a gift for Belle, a 3-cost inkable location, 1 to move in, 8 willpower, gains you 1 passive lore at the beginning of each turn, which is just really oppressive to the opponent with that 8 willpower, 1 passive lore. Super good, especially when you have some stuff that can kind of control the board in the early game. And whenever a character is banished, well, here you may draw a card. So if you're getting the library out and you're getting Vinny out and you're loading the library up with characters, your opponent starts banishing them. You are not only going to be gaining 1 lore, you're going to be drawing a card. So if you can combine those 2 abilities together, it can put your opponent super on their back foot. Now we're getting down to the last couple cards on the deck. We have 3 Genie Wish Fulfilled, a 4-cost uninkable 2/4 stat line questing for 2 with Evasive. This is our only evasive threat in the deck. We're going to be definitely utilizing it with those crabs to get rid of those opposing Elsas, and when you play this character, draw a card. He's also going to be really good into the Steel matchup with his 4 willpower, and like I mentioned, into that Amethyst matchup with the fact that he's evasive. And, you know, good against Sapphire Ruby, maybe less so because a lot of their stuff is going to remove him pretty favorably. Next up, we have 2 Bell Accomplished Mystic, a 5-cost inkable 4/4 stat line questing for 2 with Shift 3. We're not shifting it since we're not playing a shift target for it. And when you play this character, move up to 3 damage from chosen character to chosen opposing character. So keep in mind, you can remove it from one chosen opposing character to another chosen opposing character, or from one of your characters to a chosen opposing character, whatever is most beneficial for you. So definitely always keep that in mind, because sometimes moving even like 1 damage counter onto a Rhino can put it in a position where it's much easier to remove off the board because it no longer has that resist +2. Even something like a Chernobog's Followers could trade into it at that point. But Bell is going to be really good not only to be able to heal your characters, but to be able to put damage onto those characters who have resist in the Steel matchup, as well as onto those characters who have evasive in the Amethyst Emerald matchup, and even in the Ruby Sapphire matchup with things like Maui Shark. So Bell Accomplished Mystic, still really good in the meta. We're keeping a fairly low curve in this deck, and she's not always going to be something you're able to take advantage of. So we did go with a 2 count, but I still think the card's very good. So that is the breakdown on Amethyst Steel Counter Meta Set Championships kind of deck list breakdown. What do you guys think? Do you think there's cards in there I should have been playing more of, less of, stuff I should have been playing that I wasn't playing at all, or stuff that I was playing that you don't think that I should have been playing, like Palace Guard? I get a lot of heat about that one, but I think Palace Guard can be super good in the right matchup. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Always love to hear it, and get entered into that giveaway to win that Reign of Jafar booster box. And as always, when you see those toys, video games, and weird pigeons off in the distance, it is not a mirage. You guys have a great day.